All right, hey Dr. Robinson, Josh here,
Tyler here.
and this is our group synthesis project. So we're going to be talking about the week 3 stories, right?
Yep.
The journals from way back then, but still not March 18th yet.
Yep.
So we can do that.
We're getting it in there.
So one of the biggest things that these articles, journals I should say, do is they first lay the basis for what ethnography and what autoethnography is. So first to talk about ethnography real quick, is ethnography is just specifically the study of a culture, and just it's more open-ended. And something that Ellis points out in the Call of Autoethnographic Stories is that when you are exploring an ethnography, just in general, it doesn't really, you don't choose it, it kind of chooses you. It's truly like what you're passionate about, it's what you want to learn about. But I want to emphasize on it's what you want to learn about. It's not what you experience, which would be more in autoethnography.
Yeah, so autoethnography, McKinley describes it as the addition of self into the culture and writing. So ethnography is just culture plus writing, but McKinley is self plus culture plus writing. So you sort of weave your personal experiences into this ethnography, and that gives it the auto part of it. And so it's basically writing yourself into a situation of resistance to oppression or injustice, and that essentially gives it more meaning. It gives it, it's an act of meaning, and therefore it's more persuasive. So one of the things I will point out is it's more qualitative, more self-focused, and more context conscious. And what that means is, it's an experience that you yourself have experienced. And so you sort of delve into that, and you manifest the meaning behind that experience. Like, what is that experience? Does that evoke an emotional response? Does that give context to a broader social problem? And that's the main focus of an autoethnography.
And going along with that, within that autoethnography, as you kind of touched on, you have to be vulnerable to discuss that problem within it. And I recall when we first started talking about autoethnography, something I remember from like one of the earlier weeks of class, I don't remember exactly, I didn't really like the word vulnerability when we were talking about it, but now I understand like it's truly, you have to make yourself open to judgment for people to almost criticize you. When you're talking about your autoethnography. And there's a couple examples of that I want to talk about. So in the Call of Autoethnography Stories, which I was talking about earlier, it was a girl named Penny. She was talking about how she was a domestic violence victim. And in the first chapter of that, which was called The Introduction and Interruptions, Hector talked about his struggles, with interracial dating. So these are very, very, they not only are autoethnographic, but they also help highlight, social problems as a whole.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the big things, one of the important things about autoethnography is tying in all of this together. Like, there's a few elements of a good autoethnographic piece. That includes subjectivity, which is your emphasis on yourself, right? Placing yourself in the culture. Credibility, how believable are you? And as you said, Hector and Penny, they had very, very believable, and you really feel the empathy in that situation. Reflexivity is especially emphasizes how exactly you place yourself within that culture. Like, what is your place within the culture specifically? Contribution, how does that contribute to the reader of the piece? So as a reader, what do you gain from reading that piece? Because I think there's a lot to gain from any autoethnographic piece. And then finally, aesthetic merit. So there's a lot of autoethnographies they're very tragic typically, because you're in this vulnerable state. But at the same time, there's a beauty to it.
Absolutely.
You've gotten through the experience, you've had this cultural awakening, and you're able to really gain meaning from the experience.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, that puts us kind of out of time, but I mean, I think that about sums it up. Yeah, thank you for watching. But I mean, absolutely, like, just autoethnography, you know? We'll just drop this last part out.